What's up, everybody? It's Justin. Welcome to Live Ask Me Anything number 68. Happy to be here, everybody. Still getting used to this new Instagram thing where I have swipe up features. So I had to make sure. I almost forgot. I was like, I got to get on Instagram and let people know that they can swipe up on my fancy page to come over and join us at facebook.com/the Clovis Culture, which is where we are right now. So hopefully we get some new people in here who have never been on a Ask Me Anything episode before. So I'm going to try to have my microphone off to the side because it always gets in my way when I want to use my computer in case I need to do this and do some typing or anything. So hopefully it sounds all right on the podcast. Looks pretty good in the WAV file in GarageBand, which I use to record. They should send me free stuff now because I mentioned them, right, on my giant platform where they'll get a lot of sales from me. What's up, everybody? How we doing? What's up, Judy? What's up, Jennifer? What's up, Stephanie? What's up, Jessica? What's up, Catherine? People coming into the room. Awesome. You guys are probably used to me being fashionably late by 2 to 5 minutes. I don't know why that always happens, why I got to do things last minute. But I've been super busy lately, which is really cool. I got a little bit nervous today because my computer basically ran out of memory. So I had to get a new hard drive because I've been recording a lot of videos. So that's an exciting piece of news. Amy, what's up? Hi, Amy. What's up, Stephanie? Hiya. And my whiteboard's all set up. I'm filming videos all day today, filming videos yesterday as well, a ton of videos. So if you guys are I Am Clovis members, I actually put new videos into the membership portal, a bunch of them. I added a chin-up tutorial to the fitness section. I added a bench press tutorial to the fitness section because watching people bench press drives me crazy. So go check that out. I also added just little clips to explain to you guys what's so special about the I Am Clovis membership platform. So there's a video explaining the ambassador program. There's a video explaining custom macros and how that works going forward, because I am actually going to be letting the general public buy custom macros again on the I Am Clovis store. So there's a whole message video with me explaining what's happening there. I explained the partnerships that I have with all these different brands, everything from kettlebells to nootropics and super greens and sea salt, right? All the things that you can get a discount on through being a member. There's a new video there. So there's a new video in the fitness section explaining the fitness. And then below that is 2 new tutorials. There's a video for the approved foods list. There's a video for custom macros. There's a video for the Clovis discounts explaining that. There's a video explaining the brand discounts as well. Ambassador program. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Anyway, if you go to your members page, if you're a member of I Am Clovis, just go in there and start clicking around. You're going to see a lot of new content there that I put up, just these new videos that I wanted to get out to explain things a little bit better, because I feel like the membership platform is awesome and nobody is utilizing it to its full potential. I'm telling you right now, with the questions I get in email and everything from people that are members, I know people aren't using this to its fullest potential, and you should be. So that's my bad. That's not your fault. That's my fault for not explaining, like, do you realize how awesome this platform is? Please use everything. Like, go through this thing with a fine-tooth comb, go through every section and see what it has to offer. So I recorded some videos to help you guys with that. So if you're a member, check it out after the AMA, after we get into what we're going to talk about tonight. Lovely. What's up, Lovely? What's up, Mike? What's up, Laura? What's up, Travis? What's up, Lori? What's up, everybody? So thank you for all the people that submitted questions at ama.iamclovis.com. It helped me to, today, once I got done all the stuff I had to get done, I started clicking around, checking out some of these questions, and there's some really good stuff, really interesting stuff that it'll be really fun to dive into. So let's see. Yeah, it's already 8:08, so let's just dive in. Let's hit this thing. What's up, Deb? Welcome. So the first thing that I want to talk about is this. We're going back to carnivore, ladies and gentlemen. So I've opened a can of worms here by having Paul Saladino on the podcast, and I love that. I love that. Why do I love that? I love it because you guys are starting to think outside the box, right? So I am the weird guy that has been thinking outside of the box for quite some time, that has not trusted nutrition, quote unquote, studies that are funded by big food companies and big pharmaceutical companies. I have not trusted them for a long time. So a little bit of backstory that I haven't talked about in a while. So I don't know if some of you new members even know about this, but I had a niece, she's still with us, that was born terminally ill 5 years ago. She turned 5 in April. So she's actually outlived her life expectancy because her condition is so rare. So that 5 years ago was where I really learned about the ketogenic diet for the treatment of, neurological issues. So she was having like 300 plus seizures a day. That's where I learned about ketosis, the ketogenic diet. And that's also where I learned how horribly wrong the medical community gets anything with chronic disease and nutrition wrong. It's just horrific, absolutely horrific. So that's what put me on kind of the warpath to learn all the things that I've learned super intensely over the last 5 years. But I had been learning about paleo and that kind of thing for 2 years prior to that. So anyway, the reason why I'm saying this is I have an immense distrust of the medical community. I have an immense distrust of government. I have an immense distrust of just about any form of mainstream information that you can think of. Does that make me a tinfoil hat guy? Yeah, sure. So be it. I don't trust the Republicans. I don't trust the Democrats. I don't trust the doctors. I don't trust the lawyers. I don't trust any of them. Okay? Period. So why? Is that a bad thing? Are these bad people? I'm not saying that. Some of them are bad, sure. But I choose to think for myself. And I think that the world would be doing itself a huge favor if more people decided to do that. So I'm by no means saying more people should be like me. I'm just saying that more people should be willing to think outside the box. We're afraid to think outside the box because we get shot down by a lot. I get called a lot of mean, nasty names, everybody. For real. For me saying like, hey, vegetables are not probably as nutrient dense as meat. Just saying, like that's kind of how it goes, right? And I'll just get my head ripped off. Or saying that fruit is not as healthy as we think it is, and I'll get my head ripped off for that. Or kids need carbohydrates, they're growing, right? I get slaughtered by people that they literally hate me. There are people that hate me, right? I get messages from people that actually hate me for my beliefs in like nutrition. It's really, really strange. It's a weird world that we live in. So anyway, that's why I'm thrilled that I had Paul on the podcast, because Paul is not afraid to think outside the box, even though he has a conventional medical degree, even though he worked under a cardiologist, and now he's recommending a high animal protein, high animal fat diet with this carnivore diet, right? But what has happened is through having this guy on the podcast and engaging in this conversation, what I like is that a lot of Clovis people went out and started exploring other areas, right? So here's the one thing that people have explored. That is that plants contain toxins, period. I've been talking about it for a very long time. I've been talking about lectins for a very long time. I've been talking about oxalates for quite a while, and things like spinach and kale. I've talked to you guys a little bit in past AMAs about how you probably don't want to eat a bunch of raw kale. You probably don't want to eat a bunch of raw spinach. You should at least saute it. And even that isn't getting rid of all the oxalates. So oxalates, whatever oxalates. So it's a real problem. There are a lot of plant toxins. There are a lot of toxins in plants that just don't exist in meat. So I've done a pretty good job of it with the Clovis approved foods list, removing the most problematic offenders that are loaded with lectins. So this basically, the Clovis list is an anti-lectin list. A lot of people are familiar with Dr. Stephen Gundry and his work with plant lectins, kind of brought it into the mainstream. That's great. I really think that's great. So there's this new conversation coming up around these oxalates, and Paul did a great podcast with a woman named Sally Norton, I believe, talking about oxalates. So oxalates have been in the mainstream discussion for quite a while because they are serious. They're really nasty little things, and they're in cleaning products and plastics, right? I've talked about estrogenics and estrogeneration before, but I had 4 different AMA questions come in from 4 different people. So I'll bring up the notes here about these oxalates. And one is saying, have you ever researched oxalates? I listened to the podcast with Sally Norton. She talks about oxalate toxicity, right? Talking about how they're bad in sweet potatoes, nuts, spinach. Another question was, hey, this may get into nerdy science. What are your thoughts on oxalates? And have you had people experience issues with them or forming kidney stones, right? So we're going to talk about kidney stones here in a second. We'll get into that, the role that oxalates play in that, where it's calcium that gets the blame, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So these are longer questions here. Another person said, hey, I know that Clovis naturally avoids many of these oxalate-rich foods like nightshades, but spinach, kale, broccoli, and sweet potatoes, even chocolate have some oxalates, and they're allowed on the diet, right? So let's jump in here. Now, one thing I want to say is I get this from people in the beginning of Clovis where they say that they have kidney pain. That's probably not what you're dealing with. I really don't think that you're like, ow, my kidneys hurt, right? That could be a number of things. It could be lower back pain. It could be anything really. And if you were to say like, this specific pain that I'm feeling at this particular nerve ending right now is in my kidney, right? So let's talk about it. Are you going from a standard American diet to Clovis? Now, if so, there's a boatload of oxalates in all sorts of non-Clovis approved foods, right? Beans have a ton of them. Grains have them. A bunch of seeds have them. Peanut-containing products have them. Almonds have them, right? So the odds were you're probably getting oxalates in your diet. It's not like you're switching to Clovis and all of a sudden you're on a high oxalate diet. That's not what's happening here. So odds are, I don't know when someone says like my kidneys hurt, right? I don't even know how to really address that because I'm not in your body for sure. How do you know you're having kidney pain is another strange question to ask yourself, right? How do you know that's the case? But if we were to just say, benefit of the doubt, cool, maybe you have an issue with oxalates. You totally could. That could be true. You could be feeling pain from oxalates, I guess. In which case you could experiment with doing away with them. So there's this thing that universally Clovis, Dr. Stephen Gundry, Rhonda Patrick's huge on them. Paul has been critical of her work. Everybody talks about vegetables being good for you. Load up on vegetables. I eat like a pound of broccoli a day. I eat a lot of vegetables, right? Now I've been thinking about this with all this new information that's coming up. So let's talk specifically about oxalates, and then we can get into what you guys can do about this if you want to do anything about it. So oxalates are basically, it's a family of molecules, right? They're basically salts. They're these like chemical salts. And there's a term oxalic acid. So it's basically these oxalates are acids, right? You think of them, I'm trying to think of a metaphor to give you guys for these. So these oxalates, they're molecules that grab onto other molecules and they change the function of those other molecules in your body. So I like to think of it as like a catcher's mitt going around looking for baseballs, you know what I mean? So these oxalates are these negatively charged molecules, which means that these positively charged molecules are really attracted to them. So a good example of that is minerals are positively charged, right? Minerals are positively charged, which makes them attracted to this negatively charged catcher's mitt going around, right? This oxalate that's like, bind to me, I'm going to catch you, baseball, right? One of the baseballs that always seems to find itself in that catcher's mitt is calcium. So calcium binds to these oxalates very, very easily. And then all of a sudden, calcium gets a whole bunch of blame for stuff that calcium didn't do, man. Calcium's a pretty cool dude, right? I supplement bone meal for calcium, matter of fact. But what happens is things like kidney stones. A doctor will be like, well, you have too much calcium in your diet, and now you got kidney stones. It's not actually what's happening, right? Calcium is a mineral in the body, but when calcium is bound to an oxalate, it becomes a toxin in the body. So now you're dealing with something called calcium oxalate, right? So people say like calcium, kidney stones. No, it's actually calcium oxalate kidney stones, okay? So the calcium is not causing kidney stones. It can't cause the kidney stones without that oxalate playing a role in things. So calcium not only gets a bad rap for kidney stones, it gets a bad rap for arthritis, it gets a bad, even plaque in arteries. People talk about calcium and plaque in arteries, right? But again, this is a calcium oxalate. It doesn't get there, it doesn't get to be plaque without the oxalate part of this, okay? So the issue with these oxalates is they can actually be compounding over time, meaning they get worse and worse and worse as you're chronically exposed to them. And like I said, estrogenics, we talk about plastics, certain cleaning solutions and stuff have these oxalates, or if you're eating high oxalate foods all of the time, it can compound, and this can actually cause autoimmune conditions, right? So these, or even things like gout. People talk about gout, right? And protein gets the blame for gout, this buildup of uric acid. But the same way, like these uric acid molecules can get stuck in your joints and cause like arthritis pain. That's really what the pain comes from. It's like crystallizes in your joints, right? So oxalates can do the same exact thing. So there's a lot of things that are getting the blame that are, it's one factor of many that's causing these things. There's actually a question I have about cholesterol that we're going to talk about later in this episode. Cholesterol is the same thing, right? Cholesterol by itself doesn't cause cardiovascular disease. It doesn't. It can play a role in it. It's a factor of it. But without other factors, it's useless. It's a zero risk, right? Unless you have other factors at play. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about when cholesterol is risky and when it isn't, and when we don't really know because the nutrition science isn't really sound there, right? So let's talk about these oxalates. Oxalates are in a ton of foods. So I want to talk about the biggest offenders of these. Now, Clovis does away with a lot of these big oxalate foods. So I want you guys to understand that, right? So as we talked about potatoes, but they are in sweet potatoes as well. They're in potatoes, they're in beans, they're in grains, they're in bran, sesame, and other seeds. Peanuts are loaded with them. Almonds have a bunch of them, and other nuts things like figs and kiwi. So some of these fruits have a lot of oxalates, but lots of Clovis approved foods have them as well. So we talk about things like Swiss chard or spinach, beets, even chocolate. Nah, don't mess with my chocolate, dude. Even chocolates have it. Sweet potatoes, black pepper, curcumin, turmeric. Turmeric's in my paleo powder, right? And has some oxalates in it. So this is another argument for why this carnivore diet has become so popular. People just saying, you know what, dude, screw it. I'm just going to avoid all plant matter. So now that we know that you can avoid all plant matter and live a long, healthy, happy life with what these carnivores are doing. There's people coming out of the woodworks now on podcasts that have been carnivore for 20 years, you know? So we know that you can live a happy, healthy life that way. So some people are like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm done trying to figure out which vegetables cause problems and which vegetables don't cause problems. I'm just going to go carnivore. I totally get it. I'm not saying that you need to do that though. And again, that's not what Paul is saying either. I've talked to Paul about this, right? So there are a lot of safe veggies that don't contain oxalates, and some good examples of that are like avocado, bok choy is a good option, cabbage, even lettuce doesn't have a lot of it. Not that lettuce has a lot of nutrient density or any real value to the body. Cauliflower, cilantro, garlic, like your spices, mustard greens, mushrooms seem to be pretty great. So there's a lot you can do. So when I think about the carnivore diet, I think about people who are really struggling with some kind of chronic illness, right? Like an autoimmune condition or something like that, that they just have not been able to crack the code on. So people have used things like autoimmune paleo. I've always thought that autoimmune paleo is not restrictive enough, honestly. I think Clovis is a better option for autoimmune conditions than autoimmune paleo is. I've used things like a Clovis approved low FODMAP. I take a general low FODMAP diet and I Clovisify it. Clovisify the low FODMAP diet, yeah, by making it even a little bit more restrictive to be more powerful, right? There's a lot of these elimination diets that people are doing, but what's the common denominator? The common denominator really seems to be plant matter. The only other thing that I see as being as problematic as these plant foods is dairy. And dairy is really, really inflammatory. Dairy causes a lot of problems for a lot of people, right? So I get it. I get why people want to remove these things, but I have thrived for years on my chosen vegetables. I love avocados. I love broccoli. I do use some spinach and kale, even Swiss chard sometimes. I do like a lot of cauliflower. I'm a big fan of cauliflower. I love sweet potatoes, right? But I'm also not dealing with these debilitating health conditions. I mean, you're talking about people who have sleep apnea, constant sleep disruption. You have people that have arthritis and gout and stuff in their joints that's so painful they can't walk, they can't get out of bed, right? You have people that just are having awful, catastrophic health conditions, and they remove plants and those things go away. So it's anecdotal, but we can't argue with that. That's fantastic that there's a solution for them. So there are very few people. There's one person in particular inside of Clovis that I won't mention her name because I didn't tell her I was going to, but there's one person inside of Clovis that I'm working with right now with a carnivore diet. And I'm telling you right now, her symptoms improved in like 2 days. It's really ridiculously powerful. But I don't think that everybody needs it. It's not necessary for everybody. So I've talked about this with autophagy. I've talked about Rob Wolf's touches on this as well. I really just think that our go-to state as humans is healthy, and we messed it all up 10,000 years ago when we started agriculture. You know, that's where we started messing things up, eating mostly grains and all these things. These things are transgenerational, the epigenetics and genetics that are handed down. So I think what's happening is the human species is becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. I really think that's what's happening. Generation after generation, we just become weaker and weaker and lesser immune systems, and we're less resilient, right? And our gut microbiomes are all messed up from C-sections and baby formula and constant antibacterial hand soap when we were kids and antibacterial Purell getting smushed on our face when we're on field trips, right? Everything has been against us. The phytoestrogens, the estrogenics, and all the toxins, the chemicals, our freaking fluoride toothpaste, our deodorant with aluminum in it, everything you can think of, the fabric softener that's killing you. All these things that we've used thanks to modern technology, I literally think it's a matter of the human species getting weaker. That's a real problem, right? I mean, let's stop and think about that. Like our great grandparents weren't like, I ate spinach and my elbows hurt, right? You're like, no, they were like, oh, another war? Okay, cool. Depression? Yeah, okay, I got that too. I'll survive on milk fat and bread for like 8 years, and then I'll fight a war. It's cool, right? That's a different kind of people, ladies and gentlemen. That's really what's happened. That's what I think is happening. I think we're becoming weaker and weaker because our constant modern day society, technologically advanced, society that we live in is trying to kill us. Trying to kill us every damn day. It's ridiculous. That's what we're dealing with, right? So let me see. We got some comments coming in. I'm getting the looks and the nastiness from people because I don't eat fruits. Yep, those people that eat all that fruit probably got some belly fat that they could stand to lose. Tabitha, I'm going to bed, but I'm sharing. Looking forward to the podcast. Yeah, share, everybody. Everybody share. Click on the share button. Share it to your timeline. I'm going to do it right now because can I do it? I don't know that I can do it while I'm on this Facebook thing. Weird. Okay, but click the share button, share it to your timeline, click the happy face, the like button, all those things. I always forget to say these things, but the engagement really helps. The engagement makes the live video more popular, populates on more people's feeds. If you share it on your feed, more of your friends are going to see it who might not see Clovis content. So if you think, I think this conversation is super cool. I love talking about this stuff. So if you think your friends would benefit, awesome. Anna, plant paradox, yes. Anna, I can eat some veggies. Cauliflower gives me gas, as well as cabbage. Yes, those are both fermentable carbohydrates. What else we got? Lots and lots of comments. All right, cool. Yeah. All right. The incredible shrinking woman. Yes, Carla. I think I'm too young for that. I don't know what that is, but human beings have been shrinking. That's fun. And shrink. I mean, literally, we were at our most robust health about 10,000 years ago, and the Clovis culture, I believe, was somewhere between 12,600 and 13,600 years ago, something like that. But they were very robust hunter-gatherers, and they were super healthy. Weird, right? So anyway, I just think that humans are becoming less robust, less healthy, less resilient. And that's what I'm trying to do. It's the same way, a lot of people say that, like Steph Gaudreau says harder to kill, and Tim Kennedy says harder to kill. He had a TV show called Harder to Kill. That's what we're really doing here, making ourselves more resilient. That's what we need to do. It's just like, I can't believe the average American today is just, I mean, if something goes wrong, if there's an Armageddon type scenario, people are just going to die by the billions because they can't survive without carbohydrates for 3 hours, or they're hypoglycemic, right? I mean, really think about that. If you stop and think about it in a survival scenario, a lot of people are in a lot of trouble if things go south, things go sideways, right? It's pretty crazy. Joel, I think the plant lectins is the biggest part of Clovis that people don't understand. When I tell them I don't eat tomatoes, cucumbers, almonds, etc., that just seems like insanity. Yeah, absolutely. Until you experience it for yourself. And you experience now with lectins, one of the fastest things that people notice is the cognitive change. So I get this a lot from people. So I have a time management app on my computer, and I clock usually somewhere between 10 and 12 hours on this computer every day, which I know is not healthy. But I do take breaks. I work for 45 minutes and then I take 5-minute breaks. I use a vibration platform. I do some stretches, walk around the house. I try to train daily, especially now that I'm done with mass gains. You guys can probably see it on my Instagram. I train basically daily. I do some form of physical training. I use a stand-up desk. So I try to combat these things. But what I really notice, these plant toxins, is cognition. Right? So people are like, dude, you put out so much content. There's so many videos and you're always on the podcast and you're always talking. You always have something to share with everybody and blah, blah, blah. That cognitive performance, Paul and I talked about this in the podcast with him. That's how I judge myself. That's how I judge how my diet is working. It's how my brain is performing, how my speech is, literally, because you can feel yourself start stumbling over words. I've talked about this before, where you say and like and so and right and you really stumble over your words. You feel those things. There's something's going wrong there, right? It shouldn't be like that. So that's what others would commonly refer to as brain fog. That's a good way to judge how your diet's going. Okay, so I want to talk about this other thing here because this is super important. This goes back to Paul and the podcast that we did because we touched on this. So this is a great question. So I'm going to read this one, right? Somebody posted the question on Facebook and then sent it in as an AMA. So they said, sorry, posted on Facebook. Anyway, in the obesity code, Fung mentions, quote, too much protein turns into glucose and you can potentially throw yourself out of ketosis. Is there a way to measure, quote, too much protein, or is it safe to assume that we aren't flying out of our custom numbers? we're okay. Okay, so they're talking about custom macros. This is somebody with a custom nutrition program, okay? So Paul and I talked about this a lot in the episode. It's this idea of gluconeogenesis. The body can create its own glucose. And the reason for that is there are these cells called erythrocytes. Erythrocytes can only use glucose. So there are cells in the body that can only use glucose as a source of fuel. They can't use ketones, which means if the body didn't have some type of glucose on hand at all times, we would die. So think about that. The body's not going to let itself run out of something that's just essential for human survival. So glucose, new, genesis, creation, right? So sugar, new, creation. It's literally the body creating sugar inside of itself. And it can do this from substrates that are not glucose, right? That are not carbohydrates. It can make glucose out of things like triglycerides, right? It can break apart a triglyceride, grab that glycerol backbone, convert it to glucose, boom, you got some glucose. So the body can create its own glucose so that it doesn't die in times of food scarcity, right? So I joke around about this a lot, and I say that the keto community has this weird idea that if you eat a bunch of animal protein, it's going to somehow turn into cheesecake or chocolate cake in your veins, and it's going to fill your veins with sugar. And no, it's just not true. So gluconeogenesis is driven by demand in the body. So we're going to get into this in a second, but this idea of kicking yourself out of ketosis, stop thinking about it that way. So it's going to confuse you to think about it that way, because people think like, if I'm not in deep ketosis, I'm not burning fat. And that's not true, right? So there's this kind of abstract number of 0.5 millimolar for your blood ketone readings that means you're in ketosis. But actually, if you have any ketones present in the blood whatsoever, you're burning fat whatsoever. Even if you don't hit that 0.5 millimolar when you're doing a little pinprick on your finger or whatever, if you have any ketones present in the system, your body is burning fat, because as soon as you have insulin in the system, that's shut off. That fat burning is shut off, right? So if you have ketones present in the blood, you are burning fat, okay? So gluconeogenesis is driven by demand. The body won't just start creating it for no reason. So if you're actually in ketosis, it's virtually impossible for protein to actually kick you out of ketosis. Using that word, those choice words, kick you out of ketosis, is not really accurate. So even if it decreases the amount of ketones present in your blood, it's not kicking you out of ketosis. So the problem is people think of ketosis and non-ketosis. Like ketosis, non-ketosis, burning fat or burning sugar. But the thing is, these two fuel sources don't replace one another. They really don't. It's not one or the other all the time. They don't replace one another. They sort of displace one another, I guess, is the idea that I'm trying to get at here. So if you're in ketosis, like I said, glucose is going to get reserved. If you have a bunch of ketones available for fuel, most of the body can run on ketones, including the brain, right? So the body's like, oh, we got a bunch of ketones, we're good. So the glucose that is available in the body from gluconeogenesis, it's reserved for those erythrocytes, those cells that can only use glucose. So those are going to go, they're going to get shuttled one way, shuttled to those cells that need it, and the ketones are going to take care of everything else, right? So you're technically burning ketones and glucose at the same time. What? Crazy, right? I know, ridiculous. So you're technically burning both at the same time. But when you get into a case of non-fat adapted people, let's talk about metabolically broken. Some people don't like the word broken. So let's say metabolically inflexible people. This is where the sticky situation happens. So this person asked about Dr. Jason Fung and the obesity code specifically. So I love Jason Fung's work. I really do. And I have to say this, his work is fantastic. Dr. Jason Fung's work is also probably more bastardized than anyone else's work I have ever seen, meaning people take it and run with it and misquote him and do things that he doesn't necessarily recommend, and they use his advice for specific cases as blanket statements. That's really tricky. I see that a ton with his work. So what I love about Jason Fung is he only uses these human-based clinical studies in all of his books, and he breaks things down super simply. That's what I like to think of as myself. I like to take high-level stuff and try to break it down so that people like myself, mind you, can understand this, because I'm not a freaking PhD, right? So I'm trying to break this stuff down. Jason Fung does a great job at breaking stuff down, but he breaks it down in a way that's so simple to understand that people mistake it for blanket advice. So for instance, this recent obsession that everybody has with fasting and autophagy and apoptosis. And I keep posting stuff about this in I Am Clovis, because I'm like, guys, yes, I've taught you about fasting. You don't all need to do it all of the time, right? So in his books, Jason Fung, is specifically talking about reversing chronic disease. He's specifically talking actually about reversing metabolic syndrome, which is any level of insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome being like a lower level insulin resistance, and then full-blown type 2 diabetes, which is what insulin resistance becomes, right? So Jason Fung is always talking about reversing these things, reversing type 2 diabetes, reversing insulin resistance, but somehow perfectly healthy people and even athletes like CrossFit athletes will go crazy and they take his advice and they say, I need to fast all of the time because of all the amazing benefits of fasting. I'm going to fast 24 hours once a week. I'm going to do a 48-hour fast every 2 weeks. I'm going to do 16/8 intermittent fasting every single day with a CrossFit wad 6 days a week. And all of a sudden their hair is falling out and they're hypothyroid, and you're like, oh, well, okay. I don't know what you expected, Mr. Stress Ball, right? Bad idea. So it's just crazy. If you're eating the Clovis diet, I've told you this before, if you're eating Clovis, you don't need NEED. You don't need to fast. You can fast if you want to, but you don't need to. And there are certain situations where you shouldn't, right? If you're super stressed out, high training load, trying to put on muscle, all these things. And you do not need to worry about your protein intake being too high, okay? And I want you to think about these things, and I don't want you to think about ketosis, like you're gonna fast to get into ketosis, and then you want to maintain nutritional ketosis, and you're nervous because if you eat protein, you're gonna get kicked out of ketosis. No, don't worry about these things, right? So because of the combination of the approved foods list and your custom macros, when you have a custom plan from me, you're gonna be in a fat burning state like 99% of the time, literally. And that's the beautiful thing about not eating 6 small meals a day with carbohydrates at each meal, where spiking insulin shuts off fat burning, right? You don't want to do that. So if you're eating Clovis, you really don't need fasting. Can it be beneficial? Yeah, sure. Can a time restricted eating window of maybe a 12-hour fast every day, is that very beneficial? Yeah, sure. But getting into like the 16 hours, 20 hours, 24 hours, that kind of stuff, right? So this is also the reason why I tell people not to track ketones. Like, don't chase ketones, because people will eat some protein and their ketone level in their blood will go down and they'll panic and they'll say, protein is bad for me because I was in deep ketosis and then I ate protein and now I'm only in mild ketosis. And that doesn't matter. They think they're burning more fat in deeper ketosis. And Paul and I talked about this in our podcast. If you haven't listened to that, go listen to that to learn about ketosis. Like I said, if you have any level of ketones in the blood, you're burning fat. So Paul outlined this in a really interesting way in the podcast that I was like, whoa, that makes a lot of sense. He was saying that if the body were to just completely shut down ketosis by converting protein into straight glucose, you could actually die at the extreme end of that. So he's basically explaining that the protein would get converted into glucose, and then insulin would spike, and insulin would completely turn off lipoprotein lipase, which shuts down fat burning, which means that the insulin would then take all that glucose and shove it into the muscle cells. So now that glucose is shoved into muscle cells, there's no ketones, your brain actually doesn't have an energy source, and you die. That's the extreme end of things of what could happen if this. Now, when people say, protein kicks you out of ketosis, that's obviously much more mild than what Paul described in the podcast. But at the extreme end of things, that's what it would mean. Okay, so there's actual clinical data that shows that gluconeogenesis is barely impacted by dietary intake. So I have another question about cholesterol. Same thing. Cholesterol, blood serum levels of cholesterol are really, really not changed by dietary intake. They're really not. And the same thing goes for gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis seems to be driven by demand. In the podcast, I gave an example of I've done fasted jujitsu rolling. So I'll fast for 24 hours and then do really, really hard jujitsu rolling and do blood glucose measures, not ketones, but blood glucose measures before and after. And my blood glucose is higher after rolling hard jujitsu for an hour fasted. But I didn't ingest any carbohydrates. How is my blood glucose higher? Well, duh, the body goes, hey, I need glucose. I'm going to make some, and then flood some glucose into the bloodstream to be used for energy. And then my blood glucose numbers go up, right? That is gluconeogenesis. It's mostly driven by demand in the body if the body needs it, right? It just strips glycogen stores. So long story short, I think it's a misunderstanding, this whole gluconeogenesis thing. And again, like the Jason Fung thing, like if you're obese and you're type 2 diabetic, and you're on a standard American diet, you probably need to do some fasting. You probably need to get yourself in ketosis. You probably need to stay in ketosis. You might even need to worry about protein intake in the beginning. We probably want to work towards metabolic flexibility. But again, therapeutic modalities for specific reasons, right? Steven, what's up, dude? Tribe. What else we got? Judy, I thought lectins was the worst part of Clovis until I realized that I was in this brain fog and now it's gone. I feel great on top of everything. Wow, now my brain feels like I'm 20. Yeah, exactly. I get rid of a lot of things. People are like, tomatoes, I can't live without tomatoes. Okay, sure, you'll see. And you just let the results speak for themselves. That's it. What else we got? But too much protein is bad for your kidneys. Yes, Stephen, that's okay. Travis, people act like Ketosis is a nightclub and they're going to get kicked out. That's a really good way to put it. That is what people do. It's like they're panicked. They want to stay in it all the time. It's crazy. The idea that our even ancient, our ancestors, our hunter-gatherers would have been in just ketosis 100% of the time. No, like when I'm sure that people feasted to complete and utter fullness, to complete satiety when they ate, when it was mealtime. What else we got? Judy, I used to fast not on purpose 16 hours every day. Now I don't do that and started losing weight again. Love me some Justin. Ta-da! If you're listening to the podcast, I have my arms in the air in victory, which is exposing all of the alcohol that I keep in my house. There's a lot back there. But anyway, yeah. So used to fast, weight loss stalled. Judy's weight loss stalled and stopped the 16-8 fasting. And whoa, look at that. Weight loss kicks up again, right? Now I've said this before and I'll say it again. 16-8 intermittent fasting does not seem to work well in women. Sorry. I don't know if you like me just being blanket about genders, right? But from what I've seen, most of the women I've seen attempt 16-8 every single day. At some point, it seems to catch up with them. So I don't really know why that is. Wish I did. Wish I had a better explanation for it. But maybe even something like a 16, if you were doing a 16-8, then maybe you'd want to do like a daily carb refeed or something like that, where you eat like 150, 200 grams of like, sweet potatoes or sushi or something. I don't know. Could be. I'm not saying that's what you need to do, but there really seems to be some issues that come along with women doing the 16-8 fasting long term, particularly if you're doing any kind of exercise or anything. What are the biggest contributors to brain fog? I would probably say plant toxins, dude. Honestly, I would say oxalates. I would say lectins, things like that. That really seems to be the case. Also, if you are following an incredibly low-fat diet, like a low-fat, high-carb diet, in my opinion, brain function is going to suffer. I think that brains tend to be sharper when operating on things like ketones. And if you want to experience this, so you guys get a discount on Kiss My Keto if you are an I Am Clovis member. So if you're an I Am Clovis member, just for fun, go buy some exogenous ketones. Beta hydroxybutyrate is the most popular one. So get yourself some exogenous ketones. Don't eat breakfast one day. Joel, try this. Get some exogenous ketones. Don't eat breakfast one day. And then if you want to be crazy, take a double dose of exogenous ketones, or just take one dose like a normal person. I don't like to do normal people's stuff, everybody, but you can do what you want to do. So this is not medical advice, by the way. If you die, it's not my fault. I bear no responsibility or blame for your exogenous ketone death. But anyway, if you try exogenous ketones and you experience what your brain feels like on that, particularly if you do it fasted. So let's say you did like a 13-hour fasted window if you're practicing time-restricted eating or something, and you wake up and just try like a dose or a double dose of exogenous ketones, bunch of beta hydroxybutyrate, then you will understand what happens with the brain running on ketones versus glucose. It's quite pronounced. I think it's quite pronounced. So anyway, yeah, in terms of contributing to brain fog, I really think that it would be mostly plant toxins doing that. Is there any advantage, disadvantage to eating or not eating within the first few hours of waking up? I know that Aubrey from Onnit talks in his book about having fats within the first hour of waking. Dude, all right, again, this is blanket statement stuff. Blanket statement stuff doesn't work, right? I need to know your job. I need to know your goals. I need to know you're meeting your physique goals, your aesthetic goals. I need to know your exercise routine. So Joel, you got this thing where I know you're working on body composition. Now that has clicked your brain into fat burning mode and you are just really grasping onto that. And I know this from our conversations of like, you're just really grasping on this idea of like wanting to be like sub 10% body fat. But understand, I don't think that that's healthy. I don't think it's healthy. And when you get there, it's damn near impossible to maintain. Now, there are people who have the genetics to do it very easily. There are some people that can do this easily. For me, I can hover at like 10, 11% body fat and be really comfortable there and not have to change much. If I want to be sub 10% body fat, there's a whole lot that I need to do. And for most people, I will say this, for most people, I weigh 170 pounds and 148 pounds of that, 147.4 pounds, is muscle. So I'm pretty happy with my physique. An average person, right, the reason why they're thinking that they want their body fat to go down is because they don't have enough muscle. They really don't. So it's even if their body fat's going down, they're just like, how come I don't look jacked and shredded yet? Because you don't have muscle, right? So for a lot of people, like this plan that I just did, I just put on 18 pounds. I put on 10 pounds of lean muscle and I put on 8 pounds of fat. And people are just like, I don't know, dude. I don't think I want to do that. Well, I've already lost 5 pounds of that fat, right? And it's been what, 6 days or something crazy? So now I have better abs, I have better pecs, I have better biceps, everything, right? So it's this body composition thing. There's a lot to think about. So if you're trying to build muscle, if you're trying to do something anabolic, you probably want to eat protein first thing in the morning and then finish dinner sooner. Maybe finish dinner at 5 or 6 p.m. if you do want to have that fasting window, right? But eat a lot of food in that feeding window. Now, if your goal is just 100%, I want to lose as much body fat as possible, then you're going to need a caloric deficit and you're going to probably not want to eat breakfast. And I don't think that fat is important. I don't think you need to drink fat through a straw in the morning to lose fat. I think that's the opposite of what you want to do. So keep in mind, you're also dealing with Aubrey Marcus, who is like 6'4" and 10% body fat and shredded 6-pack abs. That guy might want to do fat in the morning. And the reason why people tend to do fat in the morning is for cognitive enhancement more than anything. That's this idea of bulletproof coffee, MCT oil. It's supposed to keep you satiated so you're not hungry. And also your brain is sharp because you end up running on ketones, right? So again, it's not a blanket statement type situation. You have to think about really, really what you want. You know, what are you trying to optimize towards? And that's the thing, is everybody's flailing around. This is another reason why I Am Clovis, in my opinion, is so beneficial. Because you're a member, you get to ask me questions, right? Because what's happening is this is information overload. And I see it. It happens with guys. I think guys more than anything, because of they want that physique so much that it becomes this like, but what about fasting for body composition? And what about fasted training? Should I be lifting weights fasted? What about cardio? Don't I need cardio? Don't I need fat first thing in the morning? Do I need protein first thing in the morning? Like anabolism versus catabolism. What are all these things, right? So you start freaking out and you want to do everything all at once. So really what you need for your goals is just consistency. Now, again, so that's a long, ranty way of answering. So I've explained this before too, for you guys that are members in I Am Clovis, I always try to answer these questions on these AMAs as if the general public asked the question. So Joel, we work one-on-one together. You have a custom nutrition plan. Awesome. We can go deeper on this if you want to. For the general public, it's less helpful for them if I just say, Joel, this is specifically what you need right now. So the AMAs are really designed to help people understand my approach to this whole fitness, physique, nutrition world, right? So for you, yeah, it depends on your goals. You need to flip that switch in your head. This is for you specifically, Joel. You need to decide, what do you want to do right now? Do you want to build a shitload of muscle? Or do you want to just solely focus on this body fat thing where you want to get that body fat percentage down? That's up to you to decide. I can't decide for you, but we'll talk in the back end with your custom plan and I'll tweak it whichever way you want to go. I can. But again, a lot of the sub 10% stuff, it's not fun. Getting to sub 10% body fat is not fun. It's not sustainable. It's not consistent. There is no, we've talked about that 80-20, like, oh, 20% of your meals can be crappy. Nope, not even a little bit, if that's what you're trying to do, right? So it's like, particularly if you're having trouble getting there. If you're having trouble getting there, it's because your body doesn't want to be there. So some people walk around at 6% body fat, you know? I talked to Dean Pullman of Manflow Yoga on the podcast. He was walking around like 4% body fat and didn't even know it. He was literally living in the world of essential body fat. There's something called essential body fat. If you don't have enough body fat, you can die, right? So essential body fat's really scary. You guys can just Google essential body fat and take a look at what that is. So understand that a lot of these goals that people want, these body fat goals, are unrealistic. They are anti-survival. That's the word for them, anti-survival. You wouldn't want to be that low of body fat in, hunter-gatherer times. It would not be beneficial to you. What else we got? Now eating some protein before I swim. It's about 1 hour after I wake up. Otherwise, I'm starving after I swim. It would be too late because it's about 11:30. I don't know what you mean by it would be too late. But, because you'd be fasting for too long. I see. Yeah. So again, it's different for everybody, guys. Like, Anna, you swim? A lot of people don't swim. I don't swim. My schedule is different from some people, so it's just, again, it's different for everybody. So I think here's what I think is at play. Okay. Let's talk about the psychology of this. People want to be validated. So this is what I think is happening here. I think that people want to say, this is what I'm doing. Hey, Justin, tell me that I'm right. You see what I mean? That's what it is. Like, and that's what's tricky is like, I have these videos of my morning routine, and I've really thought about like posting my morning routine. Like, this is how I make my coffee. This is how I, work out. This is how I do yoga every morning. Like this is it's 5 minutes of yoga. And I probably will film that and put it up in I Am Clovis so you guys can see that, because I think it's beneficial for everyone. But like 5 minutes of yoga, you know what I mean? Or it's like I sleep with blackout curtains and I have a red light in my room and I wear blue blockers and I do infrared sauna at night and then I take a cold shower and all these things. It's like we're all going to do our own things, right? So what I don't like that happens with the internet is someone might say like, hey, in the morning, I start the day with protein and I just feel better. I wake up and I eat a couple eggs and some bacon, and I don't have bulletproof coffee, and I'm not fasting, and I don't have paleo powder in my coffee, and I don't move a muscle. I walk outside and I have a glass of water in the sun, and I think about my day, and I don't take a cold shower, and I don't journal, and I don't do this, and I don't do that. I don't do any of the shit that Justin tells me to do, right? I wake up, I eat protein, I feel amazing. That's awesome. You need to keep doing that 100%. But what happens is people do things that feel good to them, and then they see somebody on Instagram that's doing something different, and they go, well, shit. All right, there goes my protein. I'm not going to eat protein. Tomorrow, I'm going to make the best bulletproof coffee ever. And then you're like, I don't really like this bulletproof coffee, and I don't really feel great. And I just had to run to the bathroom, and that was super unpleasant. And then you're like, okay, well, tomorrow maybe I will fast 16 hours. And at hour 14, you're starving, but you may have downloaded the Zero app, like I tell you to, for people that track fast. And you're going, the app says I have 2 more hours till I eat. Oh my God, my stomach hurts so bad. Oh, I hate this. I'm so hungry. I'm pissed off. I'm yelling at my kids. I'm yelling at my husband. I hate this. I hate this. Stop. Go back to eating the protein that you used to eat when you were happy and not mean to people. Can we do that? Right? So I want you guys to really think about this. It's like what's best for me is not always best for you. That's what Clovis is all about. That's why I want you guys to stay in the I Am Clovis membership platform so I can work through this with you. It's all about lifestyle design. If I were to choose a title for myself, I'm literally a lifestyle design coach. That's what I do. I coach you to get the best possible lifestyle for you. I want to help you create the lifestyle of your dreams, the lifestyle that works best for you, for health, nutrition, mindset, spirituality, family life, career life, everything. I want to coach you to your best lifestyle, not Justin's best lifestyle. I want Joel's best lifestyle and Steve's best lifestyle and Anna's best lifestyle and Jackie's best lifestyle. And guess what? Every single fucking one of those is going to be completely different. Every single one is going to be different. I talk about snowflakes, everybody. We're all snowflakes. That's what's crazy. What happens is you get on Instagram and you like, The Rock, his morning routine is this. I'm going to do what he does. Why? You're not him, right? All I want to do is give you the tools necessary to figure out what works for you. That's what we're trying to do here. That's it, right? Yeah, Shannon, then everyone will be like Justin. I don't want that. That'd be terrible, right? That would be terrible. What else we got? All right, we got happy faces, like faces, laughing faces. All right, we got about 8 minutes. So there's a couple questions that I had here, but if I get into them, I'm gonna end up going way, way over. So does anybody have any questions they want to ask here in the comments? Anything that I just said, or anything that you're wondering about? There's one here I could probably hit on pretty quick and get through, but I want to see if anybody has anything. You do you, and I will do me. You can't say stuff like that to me. I'm a child. I'm literally a child at heart. You can't say that. It's just, where's my brain now? I don't know. I lost it. Time to talk about fat adaptation, everybody. Yeah, I would not suggest anyone follow my lifestyle right now. Yeah. That's probably true, Jackie. At least you're aware. All right. So one thing, let's talk about this real quick. Somebody did ask me, how do you know if you're fat adapted? And this is kind of an easy question to answer because you don't really. Now, there are ways to speed up the process for sure. And I can talk about some of those. My favorite being a Clovis diet, or I mean, I guess we could go a little bit more low carb if you actually wanted to. If you want to follow something like a well-designed ketogenic diet, and I talk about well-designed all the time because I freaking hate dairy, everybody. Don't eat dairy on a keto diet. And things like aerobic threshold training. So a lot of aerobic threshold training with a very low carb diet, that's a well-formulated ketogenic diet, will get you through it probably faster. But we really don't know. That's the thing. I mean, you're probably looking at 12 weeks, I would imagine. If I were to be conservative, I'd want somebody to follow a low carb diet, preferably Clovis style, for at least 12 weeks before I'm even like, hey, like you're stone cold fat adapted. Yeah. And I mean, the truth is you may be fat adapted before that. You may be fat adapted after that. Again, there's no blanket statement for everybody. There's really no way to know. There's like these metabolic wards where they can test athletes. They can hook them up to a bike and have a mask on that measures the CO2 output as they're breathing, and they can tell which substrate they're burning for fuel at which heart rate, which is telling what is their aerobic threshold and all those things. When do they switch to burning glucose? When do they burn fat? And that's a way to tell, like, if they're oxidizing fat for fuel most of the time, they're probably a fat adapted person. But most of us can't get those tests done, so we don't really know, right? You could do, like, even if you're doing blood glucose or ketone measurements, then, I mean, you could fast for 48, 36 hours and be producing ketones, but not necessarily be fat adapted, right? So it's really tricky. There's really no way to know. So the best marker that I give people is hunger levels. So if you try to fast for, say, 24 hours and you're just starving and miserable and you have brain fog and you're in a grumpy mood, like, you're definitely not fat adapted. You know, you're struggling with metabolic inflexibility at that point. Your body's freaking out, searching for a new fuel source. So that's a good little test. And I'm not saying fast all the time or intermittent fast all the time. It's like, you know, you might switch to Clovis and 30 days later say, hey, Justin, I'm going to try a 24-hour fast. What do you think? I'd be like, actually, I think that's a really good idea right now because it's going to let us know how you're feeling, right? If you do a 24-hour fast after 30 days of Clovis and you're absolutely miserable on that 24-hour fast, all right, that means you were dealing with some significant metabolic inflexibility, some significant metabolic dysfunction by the time you got to me, which means I'm going to handle the next 30 days a little bit differently. So those are good little markers to have. I do think fasting is wonderful for testing. Fasting is wonderful for testing where you're at. I just think it's done way too regularly, way too often for way too many people. But yeah, so the fat adaptation question is a little bit tricky because we don't really know. And then there's things like I became fat adapted. I did a strict keto diet, measured for weeks and weeks and weeks, every single day with daily blood ketone levels. I maintained nutritional ketosis by mainstream standards on a keto diet with no dairy. And I did aerobic threshold training like 5 to 6 days a week, really low level aerobic training for like 45 minutes a day. And that was my only form of training. I did that for 12 weeks straight. So it's like I forced my body into fat adaptation for sure, and then still maintain a lower carbohydrate diet even when I got past that 12-week mark. So I first became fat adapted years ago. But like I talked about with Paul Saladino on the podcast, I just did a mass gains protocol where some days I was eating 200, 250 grams of carbohydrates from white rice. Right? So I would backload white rice after a really heavy resistance training workout. So at that point, I'm no longer fat adapted, you know? So you can become fat adapted and then not be fat adapted as soon as you're introducing like large boluses of carbohydrates to your diet, right? Then you're not going to be fat adapted at that moment, at that time. Now, again, after mass gains, it's very easy for me to get back to a place of fat adaptation. Like I said, that 8 pounds of fat I lost, that 8 pounds of fat that I gained on mass gains, so I gained 18 pounds total, 8 pounds of fat, 10 pounds of muscle. I've lost 5 pounds of fat since then. Awesome. That's great for physique goals. That's a really good way to do things, you know? But again, that was just me manipulating insulin and mTOR, right? So I was using insulin and protein to spike mTOR levels post-workout, timing it, carbohydrate timing, all these things. I was just biohacking to get the extreme muscle growth that I was after. And it worked, right? It worked, and I have the most accurate professional body composition tests in the world to prove it. So fantastic, right? It worked. But there was a cost to it for sure. Spiking insulin, spiking mTOR, eating 300 grams of protein a day. That's not a good idea long-term, you know? But anyway, I did it. 14 new comments. What's happening? When are you going to do the next Google Hangout? Yes, that has to be after Norway, unfortunately. I was trying to get the Google Hangout scheduled for this past Tuesday, which was yesterday. But unfortunately, man, Clovis is amazing. It's amazing. It's growing so fast that I'm a little bit confused as to what to do. I'm literally confused as to what next steps are. You guys know this as an entrepreneur, as a CEO. I'm always super transparent with you. Yeah, it's nerve-wracking. I mean, look at my Instagram right now. It's like, what the hell is going on? Like, just the mass amount of direct messages that I'm getting on Instagram alone now, all the custom nutrition plans that I'm selling, things are getting just out of control. So, yeah, admittedly, I've been a bit overworked and have missed a couple things like the Google Hangout. So the next Google Hangout, I'm probably going to lock down for probably that week that I get back. I get back from Norway on the 11th. So maybe the 14th or something like that. But let me lock that down and I'll get that figured out. MCT oil. Yeah, Mike. Okay. Mike wanted to talk about MCT oil. I can bang this out real quick. Does MCT oil raise total cholesterol? Yes, it can. Does that matter? No, not at all. So here's the thing. That's that whole coconut oil myth that was going around, like coconut oil will kill you. That's somebody that does not understand lipidology whatsoever. So MCT oil can raise total cholesterol, yes, but it can also raise HDL particle number. It can also lower LDL particle number. It can also lower triglycerides, right? So all of a sudden you have lower triglycerides, lower LDL particle numbers, raises, I'm sorry, I may have said lowered, I was confused, raises HDL particle number, which is the good, fluffy, super, light and fluffy cholesterol particle numbers, right? HDL is known as the good cholesterol, which is kind of a misnomer, and LDL is known as the bad cholesterol, which is also kind of a misnomer, right? So can MCT oil raise and coconut oil raise total cholesterol levels? Yes. Does that matter at all? Nope, not at all, because it actually increases, it gives you a better ratio number of HDL to LDL particle number. So if you've never done like a full NMR lipid profile, guys, if one more person sends me a cholesterol test from their mainstream primary care physician and says they want to put me on a statin, and it's just, oh, you have total cholesterol. That's all they're going off of. Never take advice from that person again on cholesterol or lipidology. Fire them. Get a full NMR lipid profile that shows you particle numbers, right? So MCT oil, in terms of when to take it, Mike, I actually don't recommend it for you right now. Honestly, I really don't. For you, because your goal is to burn body fat. Like our number one goal for you, I hope you don't mind me telling people that, but like our number one goal for you right now is to burn body fat, right? So you're giving the body an exogenous source of fatty acids. Now, that said, if you're staying within your macros, then MCT oil is probably a good option if you're choosing that over some other form of fat. If you're like, dude, I'm either going to eat MCT oil or I'm going to eat 6 tablespoons of grass-fed butter, like I want you to choose the MCT oil. Yeah, because MCT oil, I think it's like less than 0.5% of MCT oil can actually be stored as triglycerides in the body. It's burned for mostly instant energy, right? So, but again, start slow with it. You're going to end up with diarrhea, which is never fun. But yeah, it just depends on what you're optimizing for, again, what your goals are. So MCT oil, there's really no best time to take it. A lot of people take it first thing in the morning when they're fasted. They'll mix it with their Perfect Paleo Powder in their coffee. Yeah, but it's not some miracle. It's not a miracle thing, right? There's some people think that MCT oil enhances fat loss, or not really. There's some clinical data that it mildly raises your BMR, so you may burn a few more calories throughout the day by ingesting MCT oil, but it's really not like a furnace fat burner or anything like that. That's really not the case. Okay. So the thing you remember about cholesterol, the reason why I say total cholesterol doesn't matter, is there's these things like Peter Attia talks about it as necessary and sufficient, right? So there's a bunch of risk factors, at least 4 risk factors to cardiovascular disease, at least. Cholesterol is just one of them. And the biggest one seems to be LDL particle number. So total cholesterol really doesn't play a role in this at all. So let's forget about that, right? We're talking about LDL particle number. So 2 things that you definitely need for cardiovascular disease are, number 1, inflammation. In the absence of inflammation, you're at virtually no risk of cardiovascular disease. 2, being cholesterol, particle numbers, not total cholesterol, right? So if you were to think about it, cholesterol is necessary, not sufficient. Inflammation is necessary, not sufficient. Inflammation, cholesterol, combined with other risk factors, mind you, are necessary and sufficient. That means something could happen, right? So I have a genetic cholesterol condition. My cholesterol is like always over 250. My LDL particle number has gone as high as 2,500. That's like got statin written all over it. Any conventional medicine doctor, thank God I go to a functional medicine doctor who understands lipidology, where my inflammation levels are virtually untraceable, right? So he describes it as cholesterol is a bundle of hay. Cardiovascular disease is a forest fire. Those two things don't happen without a spark, right? Hay does not become fire without a spark. Inflammation being the spark. So everybody freaks out about cholesterol. If your doctor freaks out about total cholesterol, fire them. Now, this is not medical advice. I am not a doctor. Don't take this as medical advice. If your doctor says you need to go on a statin based on a total cholesterol number, fire them. Walk out of the building. It's worse than having no doctor. Again, not medical advice. Sorry, I just said that. Everybody, don't go hurt yourself, but don't fire your doctor. Okay, you heard what I said. You heard what I said, right? It's crazy. It's insane that people are still doing this. I don't get it. So anyway, yeah, MCT oil, don't worry about it raising your cholesterol, Mike. No. Yeah, major headaches, day 6, unreal. Good. Mike, you're learning a valuable lesson. You are addicted to sugar. Straight up. You're addicted to sugar, which is also why we have and I knew this going in. I talked to you about this when you sent me your message. You're just like, hey man, here are my numbers. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, we definitely need to fix this 100%, So that's the thing. Day 6, yeah, you're still going to be dealing with these detox symptoms, and electrolytes are your best friend. If you are not measuring your electrolytes and hitting the numbers that I told you to hit, then detox is going to be way harder than it needs to be. Electrolytes are your absolute best friend. Okay. When are you going to start your master classes, or are you? Did I make that up? I don't know. Yes, I have started the master classes, but they're going to take some time, man. It's crazy. I'm building out a 6-month class right now, and it's a workload like you cannot imagine. So again, the number one issue, I guess the stick in the spokes of Clovis is that it is like straight up just me doing all this stuff. So I'll do my best. I can't promise you. I don't know when it's going to happen, but yeah, they'll happen at some point for sure. I feel like I'm never really hungry like I used to be before Clovis. Yeah, exactly. That's a good thing. Most people's hunger levels are not normal. Their leptin and ghrelin is all messed up. It's just completely out of whack. That's another sign of metabolic dysfunction, right? What else we got? Major headaches. Pays to eat nutrient-dense foods. Literally, you save money. That's very true. Yeah, Mike, you got the fat loss shake. That's awesome, dude. Fantastic. Lovely does a tablespoon with fat loss, cold water, out the door. Boom, killer. What else we got? Yeah, all right. So that answers the question about MCT oil. I just think that sometimes MCT oil is amazing, right? Like I use MCT oil. I used to use MCT oil daily. And I'm weary of saying this stuff because I don't want to say like, I don't use MCT oil daily right now. And then I don't want Lovely to be like, what? I can't use MCT. Keep using MCT oil. It's part of your routine, right? It's part of your routine. That's fantastic. I have been focusing on getting most of my fats from animal fats. That's just myself experimenting and seeing what works for me. Also, keep in mind, I have a genetic cholesterol condition. So a lot of times I aim my fat intake to be around these kind of PUFAs and MUFAs, right? Polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats, things like olive oil, avocados, a lot of those type things that I'm trying to, or cooking with avocado oil. So I'm trying to explore where my fat sources are coming from with coconut oil and MCT oil being 100% saturated fat, right? So it's different for me. I'm not you. But I took MCT oil every single day, probably for like 5 or 6 years straight. So I'm a big fan of it. I think it's great. I just don't think it's not like a fat burning supplement or anything like that. Like I think people think MCT oil is going to make you burn fat. This whole idea, like you got to eat fat to burn fat. Yeah, true to an extent, but within reason. So, yeah, MCT oil is totally cool, man. I mean, it's just, again, it's up to you. You got to experiment with it, right? There's some people that take MCT oil before bed and swear that it helps them sleep because it's an additional fuel source for the brain while you're fasted, right? Some people do that with like raw honey, which I never really was a fan of doing, but yeah, trying to get a little bit of extra glucose or a mix. Some people do like half a tablespoon of honey and a tablespoon of MCT oil right before bed and swear that it helps their deep sleep cycles because it's a double dose of fuel that the brain can use while you're sleeping, right? So there's a lot that can be used for MCT oil. Some people use MCT oil post-workout. Some people use MCT oil pre-workout. The Keto Gains guys, they tend to do caffeine, protein, and MCT oil as a little pre-workout mix. So some people use MCT oil before going into a workout. That can be really beneficial too. So now I'm just clouding up the skies here and giving you guys way too much information, like drinking from a fire hose. I tend to do that. I'm sorry. But anyway, so I hit on all the questions that I had planned for today. MCT oil was one of them. I didn't know if I was going to jump into it because I was running out of time. So it's 9:07 now. Thank you guys so much. This is a good AMA. This is a lot of information here. So if you're in I Am Clovis, get over to iamclovis.com/members. Go to the member site and check out the new videos that I uploaded there. Particularly, if you are a Clovis ambassador, or if you are considering being a Clovis ambassador, or if you've been on the fence about being a Clovis ambassador, go to iamclovis.com/members as soon as you sign off here and click on the ambassador program and watch the video I created for you. That is a onboard whiteboard lesson, right? So it's an onboard lesson about the ambassador program, why I created it, and what it is meant for. So I really, really recommend that you get on there right now and check that out. Go to iamclovis.com/members if you are an I Am Clovis member, and check out the ambassador video that I uploaded just today. Now, if you are not an I Am Clovis member, go to iamclovis.com/start, get yourself signed up for a plan. Get yourself signed up for the I Am Clovis membership and get your hands on some custom macros. Work with me one-on-one. That's where all the magic happens, ladies and gentlemen. All the crazy transformations you see on Instagram and Facebook and people's pages and all the amazing things, that all comes from custom nutrition plans. Those are transformations from the custom nutrition plan. I am very, very, very confident that I can get the very same results in you. Guarantee it. Money back guarantee, everybody. Actually, yeah, I guess I don't say that. There's a money back guarantee on everything I sell. Literally everything. Powders, merch, whatever. 100% money back guarantee. So I'm super confident in what I do, everybody. And that's it. That's AMA number 68. Comments? Diana Hoskins, I just lost 10 pounds and feel incredible. Hell yeah, you do. Fantastic. I love it. Congratulations. That means you're killing it. That means you're taking my advice. It's awesome. Again, I can give as much advice. I can scream till I'm blue in the face. I can give all the information, but it's you that has to get it done. It's you that has to do it. And that means that you executed. You committed and you executed. So thank you. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for trusting my advice. Thank you for executing on that advice. I really, really appreciate it. It means the world to me that people are like, hey man, you just told me what foods to put in my mouth and I'm going to do it. Like, it's such an immense amount of trust. Yeah, and it's been so abused. It's been so abused on the internet. I just think it's almost like the ultimate trust. Like, food becomes you. Literally. Food is broken down into its smallest parts and rebuilt into tissue in your body, right? So it's like, you're trusting me to build your body. 7 years from now, you won't have any of the same cells in your body that you have right now because you're constantly rebuilding them from food that you eat. So it's like the ultimate form of trust, and it's just been pissed away and abused on the internet. It drives me nuts, man. It really drives me nuts. Like, I wish that I could just set up sparring sessions between me and these other people. That's not allowed. But anyway, all right. So Diana lost 10 pounds, feels incredible. That's awesome. Thank you for trusting me. I really, really appreciate it. Have a great trip, Judy. Yes, I'm off to Norway tomorrow. Yeah, that's crazy. I leave at 1:30 p.m. I leave Nashville at 1:30, so I'll be at the airport about 11:30 tomorrow morning. Off to Norway. Diana, I will never eat the same again. Thank you. That's awesome. I love that. So happy. Yeah, so guys, follow me on Instagram at Justin Nault because I'm going to do a lot of stories from Norway. I will be at a Viking-themed birthday party. I think there's some wood chopping that will be involved or something. I'm sure there will be some alcoholic beverages consumed. There's also talk of other things, but we'll see. So I will share in the Instagram story. It's going to be an incredible trip. I know where I'm going. It's one of my best friend's houses. It's unbelievable. It's literally freaking paradise in Norway. So yeah, kind of blown away by it. So I'm going to share as much as I can. So get on Instagram and follow at Justin Nault. Follow at The Clovis Culture, all that stuff. It'll be fantastic. So follow along with my journeys, just like I did in Thailand. So thank you guys. Thanks for sticking with me. Might be a little bit tricky while I'm gone for 2 weeks because the time change is so weird, but I'm definitely going to do live videos on the Clovis Culture. I'll be live in the groups. I'll do some Instagram lives. Thank you. Happy faces, like hearts, thumbs up, laughing faces, surprise faces, angry faces. I don't know. Maybe I made you angry at some point today. I tend to do that to people. I don't know why. But anyway, I love you guys. Super excited for Norway. And yeah, lots to work on. And when I get back, I'm going to hit the ground running. Obviously, all these things, the membership platform, the masterclass videos, the Google Hangout. There's a lot coming up. So you guys know that my life is nuts. Thank you for bearing with me through all this stuff. You literally just get to watch me behind the scenes build this whole company from scratch, which is what I've done. So it's stressful. It's hard. It's awesome. I love it. It's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. So just continue to bear with me and all this content will come for sure. So yeah, thank you guys. Go to imclovis.com right now, imclovis.com/members, and check out the videos. Look at the videos for the other brand discounts where I talk about the money that you're saving with your membership. Look at the ambassador program. Look at the new fitness tutorials I put up. Look at the video of me explaining fitness. Go to imclovis.com/members. And all you members, I see a bunch of you here that are members. Go check out those videos. Let me know your thoughts. Email me, justin@imclovis.com. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Ask Me Anything, number 68, with me, Justin Nault, founder, president, CEO of Clovis, building a healthy life together. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. I love you. Bye.